Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. This is our flagship show dedicated to sharing the multitude of astrological perspectives and approaches. We feature up-and-coming astrologers as well as living legends in the field, which we have here with us today. And we connect you with experts and thought leaders in fields related to astrology, demonstrating how astrology can support you in so many different areas of your life. Today, we have with us Michael Erlewiine, and we're going to be talking about Lifepath astrology. So I'm super excited to introduce you to Michael. I told him backstage that I've been following him because I've been watching him on Facebook and just loving the things that he posts, loving his perspective. And he is someone who has been in this field for over 60 years. So we're going to learn lots and lots about Michael today. He's an internationally known astrologer with experience as an author, teacher, and counselor. He single-handedly applied computer technology to astrological measurement, research, and interpretation. He founded Matrix Software long ago and has been the formative and leading light in astrology's modern growth. He's authored more than 22 books on astrology and over a dozen books on music and film. And Michael, I cannot wait to ask you so many questions about your background. You know, I think so many of us that are practicing astrology today, studying astrology today, we take for granted the ease with which we can run charts and, you know, do all kinds of different techniques with the different softwares that are available to us. And you pioneered this before tech was really a thing that people knew about. So how did this journey begin? Why the particular interest in creating software? And then I'd love to ask you some questions about your music as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, I was interested in astrology, of course. And back then my brother had a little metaphysical bookstore that my wife and I did all of the charts for it. But back then we just had log tables and we had trig tables for some of the stuff I did. So there was no computer astrology. There wasn't even a 4-function calculator until 1972. So I did that first, and then I did programmable calculators. I had little programs running on that, and then in 1977, I got my first computer, which was a Commodore PET, and then I soon had Apples and TRS-80s and so forth, and I'm not mathematically inclined. It was my worst subject. I'm much more of a mystical, poetry-oriented guy. But I wanted so much to be able to. I had questions that I was asking of the universe that I couldn't do without being able to calculate stuff. And so, before I knew it, I had gotten a program working in 8K of RAM. You guys probably don't know. It's a tiny. Right now, you press one key on the keyboard, and that would take 8K. But I had one that did heliocentric and geocentric and local space, all that stuff in 8K of RAM. And then I would make up cassettes. There were no disk drives. And I would verify them and send them out to people free. It took me a long time to realize that I had to charge for them eventually because I just was doing nothing but making copies for other people. And so then that's how the company was born, Matrix Software. Matrix sounds mathematical, but it came from the word matrix means womb, the womb, that from which things will be born. And it was from the matrix that astrology computerized came. So that's just a brief idea. And then everything, I had to write my own word processing software. And my printer was a 65-pound teletype machine that I had to program, the justification, and the stuff for all that. There wasn't anything, right?
Wow. And you did this by yourself? I mean, did you have?
I did. No, I'm the oldest child, so I'm used to doing everything by myself. Five brothers, five boys.
Wow.
So no, I'm used to doing stuff, and I'm used to. I never liked school. I hated school, and I left school before high school ended, and just hitched out to the West Coast and wanted to be a beatnik, right? And I mean that's the I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've always done exactly what I wanted to do, and I refused to work at a job that I was not interested in. And so I turned all of my hobbies into ways of making a living. But it was a pretty great sacrifice. It's just that I couldn't do anything else. I didn't want to go working for someone.
Right. Right. And I'm sure that is indicated in your chart. Yeah. I mean, I mean, you're saying you're not mathematical, you're not especially technical, you were more of the poet and the mystic, exactly. But there's got to be something in your chart that reveals this.
No, absolutely. No,
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
There is. No, I'm very good at grasping the big picture. And first of all, there are different charts. I mean, I should tell a little bit. I'll tell a little story, but it's not too long, but it's a little bit of time. It's that about 500 years ago, Copernicus pointed out to all the astrologers who were astronomers. It says, look, everything does not revolve around us. It's not all about us. We actually revolve around the sun. And the astronomers said, right. And then they walked away with two charts, the heliocentric chart of the sun and the one that we use as astrologers. But astrologers just crossed their arms and said, we're not going that way. And they never have gone that way up till today. And so the problem is there's more than one way to look at our birth moment. The same moment in time, in the same place and everything, but not just seen from the Earth, because the Earth is looking at the solar system from where we are. But the planets actually are going around the sun. They're not revolving around the Earth. So it's a very different picture to see. Wouldn't you like, if the solar system is our mother, then wouldn't we want to have a photograph of our mother straight on, not just at an oblique angle? So the bottom line is that the chart that we use as astrologers basically is a chart of our personality. It's a chart of the circumstances in which we were born here on Earth. But the heliocentric chart, the chart of a whole solar system, is what I call the Dharma chart. It happens to do with why we're here and who we are and what tribe we belong to. But it's two different directions, like stereopticon or like 3D. And there are other ways to look at our birth moment. So I think we want to look at as many charts as we can, because we will see kind of a three-dimensional view of ourselves. Otherwise, we just have one chart. There's a great jazz tune called Compared to What? And if you don't have anything to compare it to, compared to what, right? So that's the idea.
Yes. Well, and we're going to be talking about that more today with Lifepath astrology, which is...
this is Lifepath. What I'm talking about now is Lifepath astrology.
Yeah. Well, let's back up 1 second. I'd love to ask you about some of those questions that you were asking that you wanted answered. What are the questions that you were holding that led you to create the software and even to get into astrology in the first place?
Well, I'll give you a couple examples. One example is that I was very interested in relocation. How do we relocate a chart? And so that I developed a technique that's now in all major software programs called Local Space. Local Space was a program developed by me personally based on looking at our birth moment from azimuth and altitude. Basically, if your dad picked you up when you were born and he walked outside, Venus would be over here and the sun would be up here. And those lines of Venus go through cities on the Earth. They also go through stars in the heaven. So I made a chart that showed what cities and what parts of the heavens, when we were born, the moment of our birth, they go through. For instance, in myself, I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. but my Jupiter line, Jupiter again is the, or not again, Jupiter basically is our life path. It's kind of like, it's easiest to say that in India, in Sanskrit, the word for Jupiter is guru. Think about that. Is
wow.
Guru, so that your guide is Jupiter. And that's the path you're going to travel if you travel naturally. And my Jupiter line comes from Lancaster right through Ann Arbor, Michigan. And that's where I founded all of my astrology, even though I don't live there now. So that's one example. Do you want another one? Or?
Yes.
Okay,
definitely.
Another one would be, as a programmer, part of my job was to program whatever had to be programmed, right? So that, I take, okay, here's this, and we did this, here's progressions, here's directions, here's solar arcs. And then there's other ways of looking. There's other coordinate dimensions. And one of them was heliocentric. And I'd never looked at a heliocentric chart. And so, okay, I will figure out how to calculate helio, which you have to do in order to calculate geo. Anyway, you have to first have the helio, and then you convert it to geo. So I did my chart, helio chart. Gee, I said, this chart doesn't look, maybe I could show it to you in graphics, but we'd have to share my screen and do stuff like that. We'll just talk it through for now. But when I did that, I found out, gee, here's a very different way of looking at me than I've ever seen. But it's still the same moment in time, the same planets, everything, except it's from looking at the whole solar system as a being, as a whole entity. And I said, wow. And over time, and it wasn't too long a time, I began to identify or transmigrate my identification from my geocentric chart, the ones that we all use. And I began to identify more with my helio self than I did with the geo. And after a while, I realized that the helio was the mother and the geo was the child.
Wow.
Well, helio is your mother. It's like the mothership. And the geo is like one photo of the mothership, right? From Earth's point of view. There would be another one from Mars and so forth. So after a while, I began to type the differences, and it came up with like 60 basic whole chart patterns. And then one anecdote is that I charted all of my friends, everyone I knew. I was just busy all the time, especially when computers came along, because I could do them instead of slowly. And what I found out, I said, well, I'm going to do charts of all the people I don't like, and all the people that don't like me especially, right?
Ooh,
and I did all their charts, and then I looked at them all, and I said, wow, these people have the same chart as mine, the same chart I have. And I realized through that I didn't like my own self reflected in other people. If they were like me, too much like me, it's too competitive. And I was able to get through that and over that and realize, gee, this is my tribe. These should be my friends, not someone that I have to protect myself from.
Whoa.
And that's how you can use this life path partners that we talk about by looking at both charts. No chart is better than another, but the two together give you a stereo look at yourself. And those are some stories. But
wow. Fascinating, Michael. When you began to identify more with your heliocentric self,
yep.
How did that shift the way that you lived?
Well, it shifted me. I don't have geocentrically, I have what's called kind of a basket, what they used to call, Mark Edmund Jones called a basket chart. Just everything is on one side. Yeah. Nothing is on the east side at all. It's all Western. Even Neptune and the northern node, are exactly conjunct my midheaven. Everything's to the right of that. But when I looked at, and so that I don't have the most interesting personality would be my way of interpreting it of my own self. But when I look at my heliocentric chart, I have a grand trine, a very, very, very exact grand trine made up of 6 planets all together making one grand trine.
Wow.
And a grand trine is the most effective way not to have a cross to avoid a cross. So that we have two basic archetypes. One are, and this is only in Helio, not in Geo, because the Geo charts don't stand up, the patterns don't hold, but the ones that are going around this, that circle the sun, those patterns are the patterns that were in effect at your birth, not just how you saw them, not a snapshot. So then I just began to realize that some of us are better being in the public eye. These are the ones that have grand crosses and T crosses. And I used to think, well, crosses are kind of not so great, kind of quote unquote bad aspect. But no, the great deep space gravitational physicists, many of them, like Roger Penrose and people like that, all have grand crosses in their Helio chart. And I also have a lot of really well-known performers, people that we see in the movies and stuff, have crosses. But I'm the opposite. I have no cross. I have a grand trine. So I'm a big picture thinker. I'm like a wallflower. I'm outside, and that's what even as I made my living as a music critic, right, and a film critic. I'm an archivist of popular culture, music, film, posters, and stuff like that. When I realized that, then I realized, well, I am good for something. And also, I've spent many, many years, about 40 years, studying Asian culture and Tibetan Buddhism particularly. And I realized that over there, it's okay to be caring, to have compassion. I'm not a weak man because I'm compassionate. And then I was brought up in a time when, in the 30s, I was born up in the 40s, but in the 30s, psychology began to have a heyday, and they began to type people as paranoid, schizophrenic. So I grew up with no picture. It's not like someone say, you're brave, you're valiant, you're this. No, you're either paranoid, you're this. I didn't like that. And that's really how I got into astrology, because astrology gave me another way to look at myself other than as some kind of psychological problem, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, when I realized the nature of my heliocentric chart was this grand trine that was really a big picture thinker. It's also a sign of an entrepreneur. And I've entrepreneured many businesses and been pretty, not all successful, but some of them pretty successful because I did what my heart wanted me to do. And I never changed. And no matter how suffering, no matter how little money I had, and I have a very good wife who put up with all that. But actually, she not only put up with it, she felt the same way, right? And so, as I said, we're just celebrating 50 years of marriage this weekend. So wow. That's a long time, right?
Yes, it is. Oh my goodness. Okay, Michael. Before we go into, I know we've already touched on the Lifepath astrology, but let's do one more background thing.
Anything.
I've noticed that a lot of amazing astrologers are also very musically inclined. Yep. And I'm thinking there's some real correlation here between your ability to see the harmony within music and then apply that, or maybe vice versa, the harmony in the universe and the way that everything's humming and moving, and then apply that to music. Tell us about your musical background, because it's pretty fascinating.
Well, first off, I think I mentioned I have Neptune conjunct the north node of the moon, conjunct the midheaven. Neptune is music personified. And in my heliocentric chart, I have Venus conjunct Neptune as part of that grand trine. So music is something that is beyond description, beyond words. It's something that we feel. So that I ended up, I'm trying to figure out how to tell. I went and lived in Berkeley, California. I was studying with a professor there for a year in 1964. I also took acid there for the first time, and that was an incredible experience for me. But I'm very, very thoroughly not trained. I'm not a classical musician, but I know classical music very, very well. And I had all the Bach cantatas, hundreds of them, and all of this stuff, and I knew all that kind of music. But when I came back from being in Berkeley to Ann Arbor in the summer of 1965, I suddenly decided I wanted to make a band. And it's the same time the Grateful Dead were doing the same thing in San Francisco. They were starting to have dance hall band. And so I established a band, my brother and I, called the Prime Movers, and eventually became the Prime Movers Blues Band. And in that band, which our drummer was a young Iggy Pop. We named him Iggy because he came from a band called the Iguanas. And we kind of teased them because they were kind of, to us, like a frat band. But we were like a new age band, this is something important. And so after a while, we called him Iguana for the first week or so. Then it was shortened to Iggy. And then he liked it. And so he became Iggy Pop after he left he was our drummer. And he was a good drummer. And so we just did that. And we never got famous. We almost got famous because Motown came and they liked us. So they would come up in big limousines and they would drive us all around and make special things happen. I had a chance to have lunch with the Everly brothers, with my brother, two Erlewine brothers, Everly brothers. And we thought that was pretty cool until they said, okay, we want you to be a white group, or mostly white, doing Black music. And here's the music we want you to do. And we sort of said, not really. We don't want to do what you want us to do. We want to do Black music. We want to do this music, Black music that we really love, and that we've been to Chicago, we've been down to the South Side, West Side, we've seen Muddy Waters play, we've seen Little Walter play, we've seen Howling Wolf play. We want to do that. And so that was the end of that. That they wanted us to do, and we probably could have made a lot of money, but we didn't. So anyway, so then other stuff. I was very, very instrumental in putting on the Ann Arbor Blues and Jazz Blues Festivals in 1969 and 70. We didn't form it, but we were the only ones that really knew the blues people from Chicago. So we ended up serving them food and alcohol and taking care of them. And that's when I started to interview. We talked about interviewing scores and scores of them over many, many years. And that turned into becoming an archivist. And so I created the largest music database in the world, still is the largest in the world, with hundreds and hundreds of employees that work for me and hundreds of freelance writers. And my CD collection, which I don't own anymore, is in the Michigan State University. It's 720,000 CDs. So there's a lot of stuff. So, but I've made many big collections, all of which now are in universities. I've gotten rid of almost everything. I have nothing left that I can donate so that other people could use it. It wouldn't just be lost, right?
Yeah.
Who wants to make something like that and then have no one be able to use it? So
right.
Does that tell you something? I mean, yeah.
It tells us a lot. Yes.
Yeah, probably too much.
No, definitely not too much. Okay, so let's talk about Lifepath astrology again. Star types is Lifepath astrology, interpreting large-scale planetary patterns in the sky above and charting the dharma or life path of an individual and their primary relationship role down here on Earth. So what does that mean? Say it in your own words, Lifepath astrology. What is it?
Lifepath astrology is what we started. We might want to at some point share my screen so I could show you some actually, it's visual. We can talk about it. That's good. You may understand it, and I certainly understand it. I'm not sure everyone is going to be able to understand it with no visual cues.
Okay.
So if we want to do that, we could do that, and then I could show you some pictures.
Yeah, show us some pictures. That's great. If you're listening on the podcast, you can hop over to YouTube or our website, astrologyhub.com/podcast, and check out these visuals if you need that additional piece. So yes, okay.
Okay, so I'm trying to see what I can do here. Okay, so first of all, I have I think I've written 555 books.
Could you go into full screen, Michael? If you go into full screen view, it'll make it bigger.
How do I do that?
You should be able to go, if you go to slideshow, maybe go into present mode.
Okay, where do I find slideshow? Oh, I see.
Yeah, try that and see if that gets us bigger.
I'm looking at sitting here. I see one that says stop screen share. Should I just do share again?
No, you're sharing. That's perfect. It's just making the actual slideshow that you're showing us the full screen instead of.
Okay, let me see if that happens. How's that?
No, shoot. Well,
That's
oh, okay. You know what? It's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's the astrology library you're looking at,
Wow.
which is pretty darn cool. Also, I should
Where is
tell
this, Michael?
what this is in
Where?
Big Rapids. This is a studio. It later became a recording studio. I have a number of my family members that are musicians, and some of them are pretty well known. And this later became a recording studio, this area, and in the basement there were vocal booths and stuff like that. But this is the part of the collection that I donated to the University of Illinois. Just was like, this is all astrology.
Wow.
But also, I have many books. If anyone's interested, if you can read that, and here's the star types, life path we're talking about. These are just a few. I have 56 books on astrology that are all free. They're ebooks. Anyone can have them. Can you all see that Spirit Grooves?
Yes.
That's where you would go and look, and there's no charge for any of it. I've got 200 videos on YouTube.
Wow.
And lots of books on Amazon and stuff like that. So now I think it might be worthwhile to show you how you could get your free star chart, right?
Yes.
This is just a site that I created before I sold a company called Astrology Land. And you see, I don't know whether you can see my cursor. Can you see that move?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so if you go to that site, astrologyland.com, then you click on, click here, and then you see this. This will let you calculate your helio chart. Here's my helio chart just so you can see it. And all I did was say I was male. I put in my birth information. I pressed the helio button, and I said calculate. And this is what I get. But also with the helio option, you get some interpretation by me because that's the way I wanted it to be. I wanted everyone to have access to this. So, for instance, I have 60 different cards. This one is called the Entrepreneur, which is the chart of my own chart. It's actually what's called a kite. And you can read about, but it would be your chart, and you'd read about it, and also do your solar angle and your closest aspect and stuff like that. Just while we're here, this is just some of the books I had of charts I did before computers, and I arranged them all alphabetically. I mean chronologically, and this is how I used to draw them out. They're in books like this, where I would have the helio chart is on the right, the geo is on the left, and then I would draw out each person that would come for a reading in this way. I'm just trying to show you a little bit of history. It may get a little boring, but not too. These are just some of the patterns, what I'm calling whole chart patterns. It's important for you to understand that, and this is I published this astrological calendar for over 40 years. It was called Circle Books, and later it became AFA Circle Books. But these are the 60 types. I think one of them's upside down. I apologize for that, but you see the idea. These are all, so what's a whole chart pattern? A whole chart pattern means using what are called Ptolemaic aspects, which are just simple aspects, and having planets that can be linked together all the way around the chart as one single pattern. These are the things that and here's back in 1979 when I first introduced the first computer with astrology. People howled. People hated it because they were terrified they were somehow going to take away from the reverie they had painfully calculating each chart. That lasted about 10 minutes, right? Because pretty soon, and then they did the same thing about written readings, typed readings, automatic reading.
Right.
They used to cry and call me up on the phone, but they would be buying the same thing under the counter so they could sell their customers $5 or $10 of astrology instead of charging them whatever they charge. I never charged more than $35, which is not anything. Anyway, I'm trying to get to, these are the two different charts. On the left's my helio chart, on the right's my geo chart. And you can, if we have more time, it would be important for you to understand that in the center is the sun. there's the Earth. And so the chart that you are all familiar with is what the Earth sees from here, but it's obviously not. For example, I think I might have a better chart for this. Let me see this. Okay, take a look at Mars. I hope this is not getting too technical, and I'll back off from that pretty quick here. I'm just saying that from the Earth sees Mars in Aries. So I have Mars in Aries, but the heliocentric Earth was really actually in Aquarius. How do we interpret that? You could say, well, I'm a hothead, which I kind of am, but that everything I do tends to have an Aquarian taste. It's to benefit other people, or I'm very Aquarian oriented in terms of trying to share with others, which I totally have always done my whole life. Just like I share all my books and all the music and all the teachings and stuff like that. So these are the kind of things that you get when you start to look at, these are just different pictures of, what I'm trying to do is get through to people. I'm trying to see whether I can get down to, I also made up tarot cards.
Wow.
I went through a time of depression when I was really emotionally challenged. And during that time, these are just clip art. They're not great, but I did over 13,000 tarot card-like things for every kind of astrology, the I Ching, tarot, anything you can name. I literally made 13,000 different cards. Wow. Because I was upset. But this soothed me. To do this was very, very nice for me. Anyway, so there are four basic tribes that we talk about. One, if again, you stop me if you think this is just too much. This is a lot to take in. This is like a whole lecture by itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good because we're getting the lay of the land. Eventually, it's really great to dive in deeper, but we're still at that level of like, what is it, which is great.
So you want me to keep going, or do you have some questions for me?
I do have questions for you, but I would love for you to keep going, and then I'll ask them after. Okay,
so if you are serious about this, and if you can go to astrologyland.com and get your own chart, you can see what pattern you have because I show it to you. But if it has a T-cross, like this one on the left, it belongs to a type of chart, which we call the loved one, because everyone loves them. And we could do your chart for that matter. I have a really great program that does that. And now my kind of chart is called the lover. This is the tribe I belong to, and this is like my geocentric pattern. These are the ones that care for the loved one, right? These green ones, I call them green cards. We pick up the socks, right? We care for you. You throw the socks on the floor. But some of them have both types. They both have a cross, and these are trines, sextiles, what are called soft aspects. If they occur in the same chart, we have someone who's an independent type. That means they don't really need other people all that much. I mean, they can work with them, and we can show you exactly how they work, but left to their own devices, they kind of are just what it says, independent. Then lastly, we have people, like I have one daughter this way, have almost all their planets just in a little part of the chart, and I call these multi-relation. My daughter is a well-known singer in the Midwest, and she's constantly meeting people. She was, until the pandemic, constantly on the road, traveling, meeting thousands and thousands of people, giving concert after concert after concert. But she has a chart which I call the traveler, just this one, but there's other ones. There's 60 different types.
Wow. So everyone's chart is going to fall into one of these 60 patterns.
Roughly speaking, I mean, there's anomalies. There are things that don't quite fit, but they kind of fit. Just like I have a whole way of looking at aspects. So I'll just say in one sentence or so here, don't use computers to choose your aspects. The aspects are not so important. The orbs are not important. It just matters what is it mostly like. Like here's one that's got a trapezoid, right? This is part of what I call the lovers. They're lovers. They're going to be a whole. It's like a trine, but it's different. And this just shows you how to read the tarot cards, right? You know, they have green borders. They have a planetary pattern, which is up here, and they have a tribe. So the tribe they belong to, they're lovers. These are some different ones. Oh, this is what's called a mystic rectangle on the left. Often these are psychology oriented. They have two trines and two sextiles, no cross, right? Here's another one that's my Geo Chart. And then here's just what's called a wedge. All of these are real interesting. It's the same true with those who have crosses. So I'm just trying to show you that all of these different charts, here's the independent type. What I tried to do is make it very, very easy for someone to you can I have books. These are all in books that you can have all these cards. You could print them out and cut them out if you wanted and play with them.
This is so great, Michael. I mean, you've really taken something that can be so complex and given it names and definitions and things that make it easy to understand, which I think is one of astrology's like biggest challenges. You know, is it can get quite complex really fast. And it takes a certain skill and a certain way of communicating to be able to simplify it. It's not the easiest thing to do. So this is really...
But it also took, what it really took was 40 years. It took me 40 years just on this technique to get it down to that I could communicate it to just anyone that was interested in astrology. But before that, can you imagine me trying to figure out all these chart types?
It's amazing that you did, and this is basically your own technique or way of viewing the charts.
All of my techniques are my own. That means the only teacher that I had, first of all, I love many astrologers. I've been friends with, I don't know, anyone you want to think about that ever did astrology in the last century. But now I lost my train of thought. So forgive me for that.
Okay.
I started to say something. What did you ask me? Say it again.
Well, we were talking about the 40 years that you invested in.
Oh, no, I was trying to say that the only person that I learned something new from, and this people beat me up over this, was a great astrologer who was also a Supreme Court Justice in Germany. His name was Theodor Landscheid. He had a book called Cosmic Cybernetics. It just was an amazing book. And he's been to my home, and I sent him his first computer in 1978, upon which he did a lot of his research. The point is that my astrology, although I read, you see in my library, I had every book you could think of.
Right. In
almost every language. But what I learned from the greatest book of all is the one that's in your mind. And one of the things I learned from Tibetan Buddhism, which I've studied for 45 years, is that they have a thing called karma, or mind treasures. Your mind, all of these teachings, and so did every word, thought, and deed, come out of your mind in the present moment. If you can spend more time in the present moment, not so much time thinking about the past and not so much time trying to figure out the future, but just breathing the oxygen of ideas that comes out of the present moment. That's where all these techniques came. And this is just one of them. And I've published books on all of my techniques that are like this. They're easy to follow, but still astrologers just don't have enough money, right? And I've known thousands and thousands of them, so that they haven't been able to, not like astronomers get paid a lot of money because they learn to use two different charts. Astrologers still haven't done that. They never got empowered. They never took the empowerment of the sun. The sun isn't just a hot ball of gas. The sun is, we spend time in the mind of the sun. Every time that we kind of get high, I don't mean by smoking dope or something, but I mean our consciousness goes in and out of being very granular, focusing on what we have to do today. we also have days when we're just sky tripping, right? And we're just out there. Well, it's my belief that the energy of the sun and the energy of the galaxy gradually come through us, right? That it's not like we should be looking for intelligent life. We're the intelligent life. We're not something rare. We're common, ordinary, intelligent life, right? And the only way that works is that information comes through the sun, brought down into our we're looking through our eyes. The universe is looking, intelligent universe is looking through us, right? Through our eyeballs, that kind of stuff. If we start to think that way, it changes us inside a lot. So maybe that's a whole lecture.
Michael, it's fascinating. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how are you so prolifically creative? I mean, you're like prolifically creative. There's like no end to the different things that you've created in your life.
Well,
and
what that is the grand trine. If you have a heliocentric grand trine, it's like a dynamo, if you know what a dynamo is.
Wow. Yeah.
That there's nothing, I'm empty and everything can come from me. That's why it was called matrix software, because it's the womb from which everything comes. All astrology techniques that ever existed came out of the mind. I learned to do that by studying Tibetan Buddhism, by going to Tibet, and by doing all the practices that I had to learn to do, until that I even went to where astrology is supposed to have entered our world sphere, which is in China, a place called Mount Wutai Shan. There are 5 mountains in the form of a die, like a dice, and that's where astrology entered. We went there and we did puja and practices, and when I came back from that, all this stuff came out of me. It's something you can learn to do. It's so much easier to take from your own mind and follow it out, not give up on it, than it is to go and try to study this and study that. And it's so hard to study something that you're not empowered by.
Wow. Jeez. I mean, Michael, the greatest book of all is in your mind.
That's right.
That's what you said. That is powerful. We have a few questions from people who are going to astrologyland.com right now and trying to pull their chart.
Okay, I can try. Should I come back to regular?
Yeah, why don't you do that? But what they're having a few challenges, I think technical challenges maybe, but
how do I get back to seeing all you guys?
Okay. Can you see us right now? There you go. Okay.
What are the questions?
So can you just maybe walk us through, if they go to astrologyland.com, where do they go first, second, third to pull their chart?
Well, I think I did, but I can try again.
So
I'm trying to think of
what's happening. Yeah, hold on.
But that was back on the shared screen. The point is that they have to go to astrologyland.com.
Mm-hmm.
On the upper left-hand side of the screen is a little chart wheel advertising a full page of that. You say, click here.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to the full page. It's the chart wheel. And you enter in your name, your birth date, data, and you select Helio and what sex you are, and then you press calculate. Then you should come up with your chart type, interpreted by me and a couple other things, so that you would get my interpretations. Also, these are available on spiritgrooves.com as books. One is called Star Types, Lifepath Partners, and others is called Dharma Chart, Karma Chart, or Karma Chart, Dharma Chart. All of these images are in there, and also on the back is a way to look up your chart type, both of them, both your geocentric and your helio. So it's all done for you, but you have to do it. It's probably not going to happen right this minute.
Yes. Okay.
You're going to have to put in. I couldn't imagine what I had to do to even I had to write my own computer program.
Yes, you did.
That took a long time.
Yeah, we're going to have to fiddle around with the website. I think we can handle it. Yeah. Okay. This is fascinating, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your life's work and the things that you've created and that you share with the world right now. I could ask you a million more questions. I think what would be awesome to do is have you come back another time and really like go deeper into this. But what I'm getting is that with the heliocentric chart, which is essentially the life path astrology, but it's essentially what our star type is based on our heliocentric chart, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And it's giving us a different perspective or lens of ourselves, one that's less maybe personality based and more soul based. Would you say that? I'm sort of deducing that. You didn't say it.
You're a smart cookie. That's exactly right.
Okay.
The Geo Chart is a chart of our, if I can get a little dharmic, chart of our karma. It's what we're born into. It's what we have to work with. It's what we have to work with. But the one who's working is the Helio chart. The tribe that we belong to, the reason we're here and what we're going to have to do in a different sense. What the talents that we have, the life path that we're going to have to take, that is shown by the Helio chart. When I first discovered it, it just changed my life. That's all. In the sense I realized I wasn't just one thing. I was many things. And these are just two. I don't want to complicate it. I don't want to complicate it because there are other views like the local space. That's a whole chart.
Right.
And it's a chart that's like Carlos Castaneda. It's like shamanistic. It's powerful. But and there's another one, mundane astrology, right ascension and declination. These are all coordinate systems that are just slightly different ways. Not only are they different ways, like we see like nested, like the Matryoshka dolls, the little nested dolls. That's not the only way it works. They are differently inclined. We have never looked at the different inclinations of one coordinate system to another. We're not all inclined the same way. We have to look at the inclinations of planets. I wrote a technique which we could talk about someday. It's called interface planetary nodes. And what I did was calculate all of the planetary nodes, which many of you don't even know what they are, but they're each inclined differently to each other, right? So that they don't, or they're totally disinclined. They're 90 degrees apart from crossing the nodal axis. Like we all know what the nodes cause the eclipses of the moon and the earth, right? But those same nodes also occur in every planet to every other planet. What I did was calculate all that, and it was like what it's like, which is going to sound trite, but it's truly like it. It's like chakras. Chakras we think of as something within our body. That's not quite true. Chakras are whole areas of life in which we spend a long, long time wandering until we graduate from them. Like the Mars chakra isn't really only about action. It's about marriage. It's about finding a partner. It's about, I have a whole book about this. If anyone wants to go esoteric stuff, this is esoteric astrology. It's called Astrology of the Heart. And it has a long foreword by Stephen Forrest. That's what, yes, Stephen Forrest, a friend of mine, and he wrote a really nice introduction to it. But all it is showing you the journey that we are on through the chakras, but not the way it's normally thing, where we say, we have the Swadhisthana chakra, we have the hara, the gut, the heart center, and all this kind of stuff. These aren't just the chakras. The chakras are whole worlds and times of our lives. We may, like marriage is a good example of it. Anyway, I go through that. It's more than I can just say in a couple of words, but it's interesting. That's all. It's interesting.
Michael, what you're demonstrating with your life, I keep hearing this in my own mind when you're speaking. There's this flexibility of perspective, and how that's showing up in your work is in this really dynamic body of work that you've created throughout your life. There's no box. There's no like end to the creativity and the different realms and spheres that you've played in, and that is also again, mirrored in this flexibility of being able to look at yourself in a lot of different ways. And what I've seen, one of the traps for, I think, all of us astrology students is you get attached to a certain way of seeing yourself. And there's not, you even see it when people switch house systems. It's like, oh God, oh no, this like completely throws me off. I don't even know who I am anymore. And so I think that what you're showing us is that this ability to look at, like you're saying, these different, I can't remember the exact word, but you were doing this. Inclinations. Yeah. The different inclinations, the different perspectives, the different ways of viewing ourselves. It results in such a dynamic way of living, in such a,
that's true.
Not a boxed in, like Michael's this, and, it's like Michael's all of it.
What it really is, what comes down to is developing pliability. We're too stiff.
Yes.
We can't bend. We're too attached. We're too stuck. There are exercises. This is what the Dharma is about. I'd say Buddhism, but there's many kinds of Buddhism, but there's only one Dharma. And the Dharma is, what I say is the Dharma is basically, it's the truth of life, but it's also the future, because the truth is going to last until the future, right? It's going to last longer than anything else. So the truth is the future. So it's good to say the truth. And I think the idea of trying to become more pliable, there are lots of exercises and things you can do. I could give you a simple one if you want, that anyone could do. I've taught meditation for many, many years. I have a meditation center, and I've published many, many, many books on Dharma. If you go to that site, Spirit Grooves, there's literally 550 books there. A lot of them are on Dharma, maybe 70 or so.
That you wrote? You wrote all these books?
Absolutely. Some, they're not all super long ones.
Wow.
Some of them are like rock and roll poster artists.
Uh-huh.
Why they made posters. Well, how they loved art. Like yourself, I've loved to interview people because it's cool. And you find out a lot of stuff, right?
You do, yes.
And you enjoy it. So,
yeah.
But you'd have to, somehow you're going to have to get more pliable. That's what I got pliable because, I didn't go the normal route. I didn't get out of high school. They used to say to me, we'll see you at the car wash, Michael. Wow. But I had to go out and live my life. It was very tough because I didn't want to sell out my dream of only doing what I wanted to do by following my heart. And so that what I did was follow my interest no matter what. And that means we lived on fumes. And it's only when I started having kids that I realized, I have to make some money because these little buggers, they're going to take a lot of care, right? And I get 8 grandkids. So
yes,
and it's all no different. The kids still need a lot of attention, all of them, even though some of them are 50 years old and stuff.
That's true. Yes,
it's amazing. So anyway, so I'll give you one quick thing that you could do, or anyone could do. That's a Dharma technique. Again, it's a Dharma technique I came up with, but my teacher, who died a year ago, was 95, never spoke English. I had to work with him for 36 years, which I'd love to do, but it was always through a translator. My Tibetan, I can read Tibetan, but never could get any good at it. But here's the idea. All during the day, all during this day, we react. Shit happens, right? Stuff happens to us. What's important, it's not so important whether someone called us a name or we turn around a corner and we're face to face with someone who doesn't like us. Our reaction is what's important. It's not what they throw at you, it's how we take it. And it's either like jujitsu or aikido, where you learn to roll with it. So the point, what I call this is reaction toning. Because if you can learn to you don't have to do any remedial work. That means if let's say, and it can be very tiny, let's say that I don't like the tie this person's wearing. I don't like the tie. But where is that important, right? But what about my reaction? So I'm going to judge the person by the tie they're wearing? No, so all I have to do is realize that I reacted. Nobody else reacted. It's totally mine. 100% own it. That's it. Somehow life will take that taking note and start to tone it back and tone it back. After a while, you don't react. The amount of energy wasted every day in reactions, whether we're watching TV, reading a book, watching the news, is enormous. And it's micro reactions. It's not the big ones like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's a bad thing. It's these tiny things that just eat up our attention and our energy until we are drained. If you can start to, and you don't have to say, oh, I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry. You don't do any of that. That's just adding insult to injury. All you have to do is take note. And by note, you just say, you recognize that you just reacted and that it was you reacting. And no matter what the person did to you, that's not your reaction. Your reaction is all you. And you don't have to react. You can react appropriately and just say, oh, well, everyone has their own view and stuff like that. So the point is, if you can start to do that, and anyone of you listening to this, you can do this all day long. I do it all day long, 24/7. And what it's done is give me the pliability that you're talking about earlier. I forget what you call it, but same idea, flexibility, right? Make you more flexible so that you have the ability to react appropriately instead of being pushed around by violent reaction. They're called knee-jerk reaction. Oh, yeah. Everything is assaulting your mind and taking a little bit of that energy that you have away. And if you multiply that by the thousands of reactions a day, you're losing. It's like a sieve. So there's a little Dharma technique that that you or anyone could do.
Brilliant.
And instead of trying to find time to meditate, or, oh, I can't do that, I'm not going to be able to meditate today. If you do this, you can do this on a run, and you can accumulate a vast amount of time practice that will actually affect you.
Wow.
So, that idea.
That's exciting. That is really exciting, Michael, because it does sound like something all of us can do. And it also sounds like the kind of thing that we can practice as much as possible. And that every single time we're catching ourselves, it's going to create a difference. Like it's just a little micro bit of energy that we get back.
And we didn't do anything. I mean, we caused it, right? Yeah. It's nothing. It doesn't take us away from anything else we're trying to do. It's like just recognizing what the heck we are doing and how much we're losing by, saying, oh, I don't like that and I don't like this. And, you know, it's the difference between half empty and half full, right?
Yes. All right. Oh, Michael, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for accepting our interview. I was, again, following you from afar and going, gosh, I'd love to have Michael on this show for a while. And it was like, I hope he'll say yes. And then you did. And I'm so grateful. And it would be great to have you back another time. And the chat has been blowing up the whole time with people who are just loving this, loving you, loving your approach and so much of the work, and so grateful. Lots of gratitude just flooding your way as well.
Thanks. Also, I write an essay on Facebook a day. I have for 13 years.
Yeah.
Not always on this topic, but on something like that.
He does. Follow his Facebook page if you're on Facebook, because it's true. And that's where I've been watching you. Is like, gosh, I'm really resonating with your approach to life and the things that you say. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome.
And thanks to all of you for being here. It's so much fun to introduce you to I know a lot of you know Michael's work because he is a legend in astrology. But for some of you, this is your first time meeting Michael, and it's such a pleasure to be able to have these conversations together and to share prolific work of astrologers like Michael. So thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for being a part of our community. If you want to receive a summary of all the different interviews that we do here every week and the different shows that we offer every week, all of these are free. We also send out a weekly summary of all of the shows, as well as a little bit of commentary from me, different insights that we've taken away from the week's broadcasts. You can sign up for the Insider. So astrologyhub.com/insider, and that's going to give you your weekly email Again, that's astrologyhub.com/insider. Michael, is there anywhere else you want to send people to find out more? I mean, you gave us tons of.
Yeah, just you can ask me questions within reason, like on Facebook. I do my best, and I never turn down invitations for stuff like this. I'm old. I'm going to be 80 in a few days.
Amazing. Happy birthday.
Well, yeah, and how about 50 years married? That's a piece of work.
That really is, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you. I don't know how I didn't discover you guys before. Probably because I just don't go out or do much lately.
It's okay. Now, this is the perfect time right now.
So anytime you want to talk about one of these ideas, we could also open up any one of them and see whether people can get it and be able to use it.
We'd love that.
Thanks for inviting me. It's nice to meet you.
You too, Michael. Yeah, any of these topics that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to go deeper into that, put it in the chat so we can stay in touch with Michael and bring him back again soon. Okay, thanks everybody. Take care. Thanks for making astrology a part of your life. Can't wait to see you on the next episode.
Cool.